It looked like sacrificing a lot of my social life. It was just always this constant thing in the back of my head that was like, if I don't have any plans, then I'm going to make music. Put my phone away, do whatever you need to do, because if anything's holding you back from really feeling alive as a result of working on your craft, then it's like a really necessary part of that process. It's really trippy on a psychological level to be like, this is amazing and I can't wait for every single person in the world to hear it. To go from that to being like, I think it needs work.
You are listening to the Ockery Podcast, a show about men and masculinities, the challenges that modern men face, and how to chart a better way forward. I'm your host, Matt Howlett, mental health coach and founder of the Ockery. Finding a vocation is one of the most important tasks for any man. We want work that makes us feel alive, provides a strong financial foundation, and has a positive impact on the world. And we find that by pursuing our passions, perfecting our craft, and sharing that work with the world. Jack Aldous, my friend and solo artist, is doing that work right now as he has recently released his debut album, Inertia, under the artist name White Cricket. In this episode, Jack shares how he discovered his passion for music production and what producing his first album has demanded of him. Jack talks about the vulnerability required for any creative endeavor and how he manages the self-doubt and self-criticism that often arise in the creative process. He also shares the story behind his choice of artist name, and it makes a lot of sense once you listen to his music. Jack's music draws inspiration from artists such as Tycho, Com Truise, and John Hopkins, pairing psychedelic
Mr. Jack
Aldous, warm, lush soundscapes
Jack
that have
Aldous,
only
otherwise known as
Inertia
White
is
Cricket,
available now, so
has
I hope you
entered the
check it
chat.
out. But for now, here's
White
my
Cricket has
conversation
entered
with
the
Jack
chat.
Aldous.
White Cricket.
Indeed.
Yeah, okay, so let's just start with that one. Where did that come from? White Cricket.
White Cricket actually comes from, I have the book. Let me just grab the book one
Okay.
second.
Okay, Jack's going off camera. We're still rolling, man. I don't know if I can entertain the people for this amount of airtime. Okay, you're back.
I'm back. The White Cricket, the name comes from this book, which is called The Dirt Eaters. It's like a teen fiction fantasy novel, and it's great. It's like the White Cricket comes from, like, the main character is on this journey, and it's kind of set in this like future, like not dystopian. It's like a wasteland kind of future.
Okay.
Where and he's like a solo traveler. He's just on his own journey, and he travels around with this white snow cricket, which is this fantastical creature in the novel. And whenever he's anxious or whenever he's kind of stressed about something, the white cricket comes out of his pocket and it sings a song. Like the first line, like the first paragraph in the book, it mentions the white cricket singing a sweet resonant note. And anyway, but I guess when it came to picking an artist name, I wanted something that was easy to say and easy to spell. That was like rule number one. It has to be both those things.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking about an artist that you really like, or, you know, an album or something, if it's really hard to pronounce the artist's name and it's also really hard to spell it out, that just instantly becomes a barrier, you know? So that was kind of like my rule. And then I was thinking also, like, what was not taken already. That was another thing. Because there's so many artists there's tons of artists out there these days.
Yeah.
And yeah, White Cricket kind of just popped into my head. This must have been like, I think this was like 6-7 years ago.
I don't know if I ever asked you about that before. It's not ringing any bells for me. I like that.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
So yeah, so the name came from the book, and it was, without realizing it, it was kind of like how the music, the white cricket for the main character in the novel, it becomes this kind of companion where he travels around with it everywhere he goes, and it's always there in times of stress and in times of need. And it's kind of like his like guide. It's almost like a spirit guide, I guess.
Cool.
And so
that makes sense for me, for the type of music that you put out. Is that kind of what you were thinking, what you're going for, in a sense?
Well, I wanted something that didn't sound aggressive. Like, first of all, you can't make ambient music and have like a really intense sounding aggressive name.
Yeah, White Cricket doesn't sound like it's going to be angry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like, you know, heavy metal or anything. But yeah, I just thought it's easy to say and it's easy to spell, and it's like there's something that I've actually been rereading the novel and the themes that come up within the book, and like the kind of the way that the white cricket becomes this kind of symbol of like peace, and it becomes a symbol of like, it almost becomes like a compass for the main character.
Okay.
And so it's more and more, it's like very fitting that I chose the name White Cricket, because music has essentially been my compass, you know, and the album, Inertia has essentially been like this companion with me the whole time. It's been like the soundtrack to my life over the past 5-6 years.
Right.
But in times where I've been stressed, or times where I've been feeling low, or whatever it is, it's like the music is something that I continually turn to when I kind of want to shut the world away.
Yeah.
The music is always there. It's kind of like, it always has this like outstretched hand being like, I'm here when you need me, you know?
Yeah. Nice. What was the name of the book again?
The book's called The Dirt Eaters.
The Dirt Eaters by
Dennis Foon.
Dennis Foon. Very cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
he's
so
actually
before
an author from Vancouver.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
No way. I've never heard of the guy. I've never heard of the book either, but I very much like that. That's very aligned with your music. But before people are wondering why we're talking about crickets so much, can you give us like a just Cole's Notes version, who you are, why you have a second name?
Yeah.
That is a cricket.
So yeah, my actual name is Jack. I'm originally from Bristol, UK, and I've traveled around quite a bit. My family lived in a number of different places, including East Africa, and then also from there we moved to the East Coast. We're in the Maritimes for a bit, and so slowly but surely I've made my way across to the West Coast, where I am now in Vancouver.
And how old are you now?
I'm 31.
Yes, that's a lot of traveling and living in other places. You were raised basically in other places.
Yeah, like I was only in England till I was 7.
Right.
Okay. And then it was like Kenya for 4 years, New Brunswick for like 7 or 8 years. I did some, on my gap year, I went abroad. I was in Hawaii, I was in Australia. And then sort of as time moved on, I was in Halifax for a year, lived in Toronto, and then now I'm here.
So how did you get into music then? Like what was the genesis bit of that?
Yeah, the catalyst for diving into music production was, I was in university, I was in Toronto, and I was taking a program that just it wasn't connecting. It just didn't feel like the right fit. And so at the end of that year, I just decided, okay, I'm not gonna go back to school. I'm gonna take a break. And during this was kind of my first like existential crisis. It was like at the age of like 20, I was just like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I don't know what does this look like? I went to university, 2 different universities for 2 very different programs, but I didn't want to go into the world of academia. I didn't want to study more necessarily, like in the traditional sense. And at the time I was kind of in quite a low point, and I went to the school counselor, and she was really, really helpful. She gave me the sheet of questions, and she said, you don't have to write anything down. Just think about them. And the 2 questions that stood out to me the most were, what makes you feel alive? And what do you want to share with the world? And those 2 questions really resonated with me, because typically the questions that people ask are, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? What career do you want to have? Yeah. They're very leading questions, and they also kind of pigeonhole you into this like, okay, so like if you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, then there's like a very specific path to take. You could do the school, you do a master's program, it's very kind of linear in that way. Yep. And so I was racking my brain for a while, and I was thinking, what is the answer to these 2 questions? Like, what do I really want to share? And the time where I felt most alive up to that point in my life were when I was playing music and when music was involved. yeah, in grade 12, I was kind of had this responsibility of helping set up these like open mic nights.
Yep.
And I would obviously perform as well as help the other students to do the same. And yeah, it was those nights where I was like, oh, like this is, I just felt very much alive, and I felt very much kind of like everything was connected in those moments.
Do you remember the first song that you ever performed live?
I remember actually doing one in grade 9.
Okay.
I think this might have been one of the first, and it was just an instrumental piece that I made on
sorry,
piano.
I really wanted it to be some like love rock ballad, like you had a crush.
No, the thing is, I did write a few songs in high school. Obviously they weren't great, but like singer-songwriter songs. I tried to do that, but
Yep.
I'm not a lyricist, and it just doesn't come to me that way,
Mhm.
you know? And so I would always, more often than not, I would play an instrumental piece for the open mic nights. And the first time I think I played was, I was playing with my brother and then a couple of other guys. And we kind of just did this like improv on top of the piece that I'd kind of arranged.
Okay.
And it sounded great. It was awesome. It like went way better than we all expected to.
Right. And this is like high school auditorium type setup?
This is like kind of, I think that one took place in the theater in high school.
Cool. Okay.
But these other times, like sometimes they hosted them outside when it was like toward the end of the year.
Where would this
Other
have been?
time,
Were you in the Maritimes at this point, or?
yeah, I was in New Brunswick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
it was those moments where, and you know, even when I went to, I studied at King's University in Halifax.
Yeah.
And they had in the dining room, they had like the food cafeteria, they had this piano in there. It was like kind of random, but I would just like play that almost every day.
Right.
And like people seem to really enjoy it. And it was kind of this time where I wasn't studying, I wasn't reading, I wasn't doing anything, but I just like was really present and just playing piano.
Yeah.
And so it was almost, when I look back on it, it was like glaringly obvious that while I was attempting to do a lot of these other things, music was kind of always at the center of it. And it always seemed to be the thing that grounded me in the midst of doing all these other things.
Right. But you said, you mentioned 2 different programs. What were you feeling drawn to do in post-secondary? What were the 2 programs?
Yeah. So at King's, I studied philosophy and literature.
Okay.
It's the program called the Foundation Year program. And you basically study, it's a really great program actually. And it just leads into like a BA. And you basically study thought from like pre-ancient Greece all the way up to the 21st century. So it was very cool. You go through like epic poetry, like Dante, Homer, the Odyssey, all that stuff. And you go into political theory. You also study, there's like literature involved. I remember reading like Gulliver's Travels, that's kind of stuff. And then all the way up to like, you know, there's like a graphic novel that we studied toward the end. So it was very cool to see thought kind of from, you know, Plato, pre-Plato, all the way up to now.
Dropping Plato. To see, what I hear you telling me is that you're not only British, cool accent, ridiculously good looking, and musically talented, you're also well read. I mean, this is a slow clap.
I don't know if I'm well read at this point. Like I definitely want to read more, but that program and that year in particular definitely created a foundation.
Sure.
Where when people talk about Plato, Aristotle, Dante, Descartes, you know, all these names, you know, Huxley, Orwell, like all these names that I've kind of heard in high school up to that point, and but I didn't really have like a frame of reference. I didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't know what because each one of these people in history kind of have like 1 or 2 kind of main ideas, right?
Sure.
And so it was really cool in this program to kind of understand what those main ideas were, and then to be studying their contemporaries at the time and then see how thought shifts and it grows, and it, you know, certain ideas kind of come back around like a couple of centuries later, that sort of stuff.
Right. So what was the other program? That was philosophy and literature. That was Halifax.
That was Halifax. And then I kind of had this change of heart where I wanted to, because I've always been passionate about nutrition and about like holistic living as well.
Yeah. Having known you for a little while, these both make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I thought I looked into like nutritionist programs, which typically are like a year or 2-year program. And but then I was recommended, like, if I really wanted to do nutrition, I should become a dietitian of Canada. Okay. And that's kind of the more like legitimate route to take. And so that's kind of what I signed myself up for. And funnily enough, I actually got into second year at UPEI, but then I visited PEI in the wintertime and it was like a blizzard. And I was like, oh man, I don't know if I can live here for like the school year. Like the best time of year in PEI is not in the school year, you know?
Sure. I haven't spent a lot of time there, but I have heard it is beautiful when the weather's nice. So for like, 5-6 months of the year, I don't know.
Yeah, it's stunning. It's amazing.
The winter time in the Maritimes is rough for anybody, but
it's pretty rough. Yeah.
Yeah. So you checked out of that, and
I checked out. So yeah, and then I went to Ryerson. It's not called that anymore. I don't know what the name is, but I thought, okay, like if I'm going to do this, I should do it in a place that offers maybe more opportunity, or kind of maybe I could see myself a bit more long term. But it was, you know, it was funny because I'd visited Toronto once or twice before, but in a way, like I think I was in kind of a weird headspace and I hadn't really considered what that actually meant. And I think it was kind of quite a culture shock and a very big shift, just to be in like be in a big city where it's just like very hustle and bustle culture.
Yeah.
And
a lot bigger than Halifax for sure.
Yeah. And Halifax there's a lot of people when the school year's end, because there's just tons. It's such a student city. It's such a university city. Yeah. But Toronto's just like this whole other beast.
Yeah. And Halifax has grown a lot in the last couple of years. But what year was that when you were there?
So like roughly, I was in Halifax like 2013.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know when the, I guess, boom, so to speak, kind of hit Halifax. Development wise, but in the past couple of years, I was there just like a year ago, and a buddy of mine that was living there was saying like there's just houses and neighborhoods popping up left, right, and center, right? And the cost of a place has gone up significantly. But I would assume, 10 years ago, a lot less.
Yeah. It was probably quite a different city in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I got into this program and it was weird. It felt like I was I remember feeling it was like taking a step back, because I'd done a gap year after high school. Yeah. So I was then like 19 when I started like at King's, and then it was just like another year after that. Then I was back in like first year and kind of around people that weren't my age anymore and just were just coming out of high school. And I felt like I was, not really clicking with that.
Right.
And as I was taking these courses, it just became more and more apparent that this was kind of like sucking the life out of me. And it was very, I was like, I just don't know if this is like, I don't know if this is working, when you try something and you're like, okay, like, I think I can see myself pushing down this route, like pushing through the obstacles. And I know that it's worth it in the end. But with this program, it was just like, man, I was like, I don't know if I should be doing this. Like, I kind of just had this intuitive sense.
That's what I want to hear a little bit more about, because I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people, not just those who are maybe thinking about a career change, but any change at all in life when you are in a situation where something just doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? Like, we put that off so much. Actually, that's reminded me of a conversation I just had on the last podcast with Larry Hagner. I don't know if you saw that from the Dad Edge. He was talking about specifically relationships and how men need to take action when they sense that something is off, like as soon as possible. And he threw out the stat that I hadn't heard before, that if your partner, your wife says like, I've been thinking about possibly separating, or maybe mentions divorce, the statistics say that they've been thinking about it for up to 2 years. So I thought like, man, that stat hit me, right? And we so often get in these situations that might not be bad for us, but they're not ideal. Like for you, you said music was ideal. It was like a refuge of sorts. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was always there. It was like the place that you always felt calm. So how did you make that transition? You're in Halifax, you went to Toronto. These programs were like aligned with who you are and what you wanted to do in the world, but wasn't the deep connection, I suppose, that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think the programs I took in university were aligned with my interests,
sure,
but not with with my vocation, I would call it. And I think there's a really important distinction between these two, where you can take your hobbies and take what you love to do, and that's a part of your lifestyle. It's a part of why you enjoy the things that you do.
Absolutely.
But then to consider something as a career path, or to consider something as, something that you're going to put like all your time and energy into, that's something, it's quite different. And I think like what frustrated me about the typical kind of university experience is that there are lots of options that you can do, but it's still kind of like pigeonholed into this singular style of learning, or this you know what I mean? It's kind of like,
yeah, I get what
it's like, this is the textbook, you've got to learn from that and then regurgitate the information, and maybe this will apply in the real world, but we'll see.
Sure.
It's like, it just didn't resonate with me. And I know it doesn't resonate with a lot of people, but they kind of suffer through it anyway to get to the next stage, which is sometimes necessary. I think that's important if you know what you ultimately want to do after. Like, if the degree is going to lead to something that you really want to do, then go for it. But I would always recommend to people, like, take a year or two after high school, just work with people and get to know yourself a bit better, and get to know people, like, try and understand why you admire the people that you admire in your life. Because I think what I've learned is that one of the things is that sometimes people will give advice, and what they're not really giving the person advice that's specific to that person. They're just giving advice that affirms their own decisions, Yeah,
it is difficult to give like something that's truly objective, right? When you have your experience, it's obviously filtered through your perception, your own experience, for sure. Talk to me a little bit. Can you put exact words on what you felt as you made that decision, as you became more sure of the decision to go and focus more of your time and energy on music? Was it, coming home and just not feeling fulfilled from the work you were doing at the time, or the school that you were, your studies at the time? Was it, frustration in the moments, with something about the school or the work?
Yeah, it was what kind of happened during that year was that everything kind of crashed down on me. It seemed like I had gone to Toronto to do this one thing, and it was kind of, without realizing it, I was kind of just banking on that thing turning out okay, or at least going for it, and that being the path. And when that suddenly kind of fell through and I realized that wasn't working, it felt like everything else kind of collapsed with it too. And so my sense of identity at that point I wouldn't say it was linked to the program I was doing, but then it was like when I didn't have that and I was sort of directionless and was kind of floating, it seemed, I was like, well, it can be a pretty scary place to be when you're like 20 years old and you're living. And I wasn't living at home too. I was living on my own in the big city. And I had some people around me for support, but it really was kind of like, well, I've got to sort this out, and
Right.
I've got to do my best to understand like what steps I can take further to just kind of get to a point where I'm okay. And so during that time, I remember sharing those questions that I received from the counselor. I remember sharing that with a number of people around me.
Yeah.
And I think it was a really beautiful season, even though it was kind of painful and was confusing. It was a really beautiful season where I got to have the existential crisis at 20 that maybe other people might have closer to 30 or after that, where I just done this thing and it wasn't really working out. So it kind of opened up my world in a way to be like, well, now you have the chance to actually pursue something that you are really aligned with.
Yeah. And what did that process look like? Because that was a number of years, right, of you moving to Vancouver. And you said the album was even composed over a number of years, correct? Inertia?
Yeah. So I started during that time. It was like, okay, well, if music is the thing, it was kind of like music kept becoming the theme that I would turn back to as the answer. But at the time I was like, I have no idea what that means. Like, I don't know what music production is. I don't know how to record anything. Like, I had no idea at all.
Oh, no way. I always thought that you had like fiddled with it growing up and just got better and better over the years, but you didn't really have any idea when you were in your 20s or early 20s.
Yeah.
No way.
I had no idea. But thankfully I met this guy who was taking a music management and mixing course in Toronto. And we just became friends because we met at this coffee shop. Yeah. And he was like, oh, like if you're interested in music production, you should download this program. And he kind of just like told me about what I could do to kind of get started.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of took that advice and ran with it. And slowly but surely was just this, it just kind of like, that was like the beginning of this journey of just kind of teaching myself music production. And initially I started using a program called Logic, but that wasn't very intuitive. And I found it was really difficult it just felt like I really had to understand the program itself in order to create. And when I switched over to Ableton Live, that was when things started to click more. And it was just more like, it felt like the program was like, hey, let me help you create the thing that you want to create. And so, yeah, it was cool because it was just like this whole world opened up to me that I didn't even really know existed before.
Right.
But when I dove into it, I realized really quickly that I had a strong foundation of music itself, like not only just kind of making my own songs in high school, but I studied music theory when I was younger, and I took piano lessons and exams. So I did like my scales, I did my arpeggios, I learned what chords were, I learned what chord structuring was. And so the challenge was a lot more like the technical side of things, and also just kind of like finding my sound. And I would say that was the hardest. I don't know. It was really challenging to create stuff and then listen back to it and just be like, I don't like this.
Right.
You know, like continually, but like having to practice more and more and having the patience to say, okay, well, I'm not there yet, but my hope is that I do get there, that I can at least create something, and instead of being fearful to share it with my family and friends, like being excited to share it and not getting like, because up to essentially like the first track that I made that kicked off the idea of making a record was Dreamfield, which is the last track on the album. Mm-hmm. And when I made that, it felt like just like this single thought and was in the track. And it felt like a lot of the struggle that I'd experienced up to that point with kind of finding my sound, it felt like it was suddenly clicked. And then that was the moment where I was like, okay, well, if I can, and that kind of happened in like a weekend. It kind of just happened very quickly. And I thought, okay, if I could make Dreamfield in a weekend, like what could I make with more time, you know?
Right. Talk to me a little bit about what that process actually looked like. Because at one point, when I was still in Vancouver, man, what year was that? Was that 22? I think it was in the fall, roughly, that I left.
Mm-hmm.
And it was around that time that you were saying that, you know, the goal was getting a little bit more specific and clear and like a date attached to it. Like you wanted to have it done and out, you know, by this certain point, right? So obviously, like what you just said, like you found your sound in a weekend. What else could I achieve if I give this more time, more energy, right? So what did that actually look like? Did you plan out your you know, you're doing like time blocking during the week? You know, Jack will record during 5 to 7 on Monday to Friday. What did that look like?
Honestly, it looks like sacrificing a lot of my social life and social time throughout all of my 20s. Like the amount of time when other people were maybe going out for dinner or just hanging out with friends on a Friday or Saturday night, I was in my room and I was making music, and it was weekend after, like not every single weekend, but just, or any day off, I should say, because it wasn't all a weekend thing, but it was just always this constant thing in the back of my head that was like, if I don't have any plans, then I'm gonna make music. And I actually would purposefully block off weekends. Like people would be like, hey, like can you hang out, you know, this Friday, whatever. And I'd just be like, no. I would go for coffee with friends in the day, but I would always leave my evening open. And it wasn't what I realized. A lot of artists, a lot of my heroes have said this, and they said the most important thing was showing up. And so I really learned the power in showing up over the process of making the record, because it wasn't like I'm going to block out, you know, Friday evening from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. It was like, and then like, hopefully I'm going to make the coolest thing I've ever made. It's like, it never really works that way. Usually what happens is it could be like 10 at night and I'll just like open up that file. I'll open up the track I'm working on. And as soon as I start listening to little bits and pieces that I've got, I'm already like making adjustments without realizing it. I'm already thinking of new ideas. I'm already like either pulling up the guitar or I'm going to the synth and I'm saying, okay, like, what does this track need right now? What is it? What's missing? Or what's actually like needs to be taken away? You know? And so it was just, to be honest, it was like when I look back at my 20s, I'm now kind of almost in awe of how much time was like I didn't spend with friends in order to make the music. I
get that though. As you're talking, like you're seeing me nod, and that resonates with me, because even now, you know, married just over a year, and I often actually feel the pull of, I want to hang out with Dana. And we have had to put that on the calendar so that I can let go of the anxiety around when is that going to happen, because of what you've just described. I want to be in front of my computer primarily, or like the current book that I'm, you know, going through, whatever it is I'm studying in the moment. I want to work on Ocri work, right? I want to be better at what I'm doing. I enjoy it, but I also want to be better at it and, you know, provide a, you know, better service and be able to speak to current issues better and whatever that might be. But I get that. And I think that's probably one of the keys, you know, let me know if this resonates with you, but one of the keys to finding your vocation, to finding what it is that you would want to do, something that really lights you up. You know what I mean? Like more than most things, you know, that you forget what time it is. You forget if you're hungry or not, you know, you really get lost in the task. You've had many moments like that. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that's most of the sounds on the record were probably recorded between like 1 and 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah, you're a night owl. I remember.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a night owl. But it's usually not because I intended to make something really cool. It's just that I gave myself enough time. Like this happened so many times where I would, whatever instrument I was at, I would be playing for like an hour and a half to 2 hours. And it was in those last 10, 15 minutes where I finally catch the sound that I'm kind of looking for.
Right.
Or I like really like dial in the melody that I'm working on.
Yeah.
And then it's in that like that's like the gold right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, many moments where I would be like 6 p.m. I'd start, and then before I knew it was like 9:30, and I was like, oh man, I gotta like make dinner. And so
Yeah.
I like leave my room and go to the kitchen and like figure out what I'm gonna have for dinner. And then as soon as I'm finished dinner, I'm like, well, I'm not gonna go to bed straight away. So like, let's just dive back in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that very much resonates with me too. Even though like I can't say I love food. This is going to sound weird to a lot of people, but I love not being hungry. And Dana laughs at me whenever I make comments to that effect. I am a bit of a foodie. I think my palate has changed over the years and become a little bit more refined from the way that I grew up, for sure, and having traveled a bit more. But I can't stand that feeling of like that gnawing hunger, and I just want like, proteins, fats, a few carbs. Just get it done. So for me, when I'm trying to knock out a task or a project, especially before I was married, I'd have meals prepped, right?
Yeah.
I would eat like chili for a week straight. And I loved knowing that it was in the fridge, ready to go. And I didn't have to like break away from, whatever task. Like when I was working on the master's degree, just wanted to get that done, right? Wanted to knock 100%. That out.
Yeah. Yeah, because your brain is in this state, right? It's in this like you're deep in flow state for like 2 hours, and then you suddenly come out of it, and you're like, oh my gosh, like it's like, how did 2 hours go by? It felt like 20 minutes.
It's 1:30 in the morning. I haven't eaten yet.
Yeah,
yeah. I've been standing up for.
It's like you're like, I don't know what I need. Like, do I need to go for a walk? Do I need to like drink water? Do I need food? And you probably need all the things, to be honest. But
yeah.
It's just that funny thing of like, when you're in flow state, you like, time evaporates and everything just melts away, and it's amazing. And I think that's the feeling that it was not even just a feeling. That's the state that I would be constantly kind of tapping into. And what I realized is it wasn't just this cool thing that could happen every now and then. It was a really necessary part of creating the album, essentially. And it was like, so then the question became, how can I prepare myself so that I can enter flow state seamlessly without kind of being distracted or kind of, having these other extraneous elements kind of coming in all the time. It was like, put my phone away, turn it on airplane mode, do whatever you need to do, because if anything's holding you back from not only like working on your craft, but then really feeling alive as a result of working on your craft and kind of tapping into your vocation, then it's like a really necessary part of that process, right?
That is one of the words that you say that I just love hearing you say. Can you say it again for us? Craft. Croft. Yeah, right. It's that accent, man. When I was living in Vietnam, and there was a bunch of South Africans that taught with us. Primarily, there was a big group of them. Several words that they said, man, it just sounded so nice. Croft, and then and grafting, like you're grafting hard.
What does grafting mean?
Work. I think. I just think it means just working, like you're working hard on something.
Grafting hard.
So you're grafting on your craft.
Grafting on the craft. I should like put that up on the
I'm
wall.
gonna get stoned for just trying that. What was your, or do you have, not what was, you probably have one, favorite track on the album?
Oh, I think, to be really honest with you, every track has been my favorite track at some point. When I've been deep in the middle of making it, I've been like, every single track, there was a moment where I was like, this is the best thing I've ever made. Like this. And that's kind of how I knew that it had to be on the album, because it was, I think for a lot of other people, well, I imagine for a number of other artists, they make like, because there's 8 tracks on the record, but there wasn't like 12 or 15 tracks that I'd made and I just chose the 8. It was kind of strange. It was like, as I was working on each track, I thought like, I'm going to put all my energy and time into this and I'm going to make it work. And I want it to be so good that it can be on the album. So I'm not choosing which track's going to be on it.
Sure.
It was like, I'm going to have 8 tracks that I work on. And there are other little like tangents and ideas within kind of the files within those tracks themselves. But it was really like every single track was my favorite at the point of working on it. I think one of the tracks I'm most proud of on the record is Surf.
Okay.
Because Surf became before Dreamfield. That was like a really, really early demo that I had made actually before even switching from Logic to Ableton. I'd made this like 7 or 8 years ago, and it was a pretty rough kind of idea back then.
Sure.
But it captured this, like, it really kind of captured the essence of what my sound was about, which was kind of like, it had a lot of movement to it and it was very hopeful.
Okay.
And it was also a very guitar driven track too. So Surf was kind of this cool one where I had this rough demo floating around for like years. And then I remember I revamped it at one point and I re-recorded pretty much like most of it. But my drums production wasn't quite up to where I wanted it to be. So
okay.
The initial demo had like no drums at all, and it was just guitar. It was very kind of ethereal sounding.
Yep.
But I knew I wanted some percussive elements going on. So the first iteration, like the second iteration, I'd kind of included some, but it didn't quite fit. It didn't quite sound how I wanted it to. And then I actually saved Surf as like the final track. After I'd made the rest of the album, I wanted to take everything I'd learned throughout making the whole record. I wanted to take all of that kind of knowledge and everything and kind of infuse it into like the final version of what Surf would be.
And you play all of the instruments yourself, right?
Yeah.
So it's an actual drum kit, an actual electric guitar, synth.
So the drums are the only thing I actually don't play myself.
Okay.
Everything else, synth, guitar, like all the textures and everything I've made using those instruments, bass as well.
Right.
But with drums, I like chop up drum breaks and I layer individual like kicks and snares and all that other stuff.
Right.
A lot of air drumming going on at like 2 a.m.
Dude, as a drummer to another drummer, do you drum with your teeth? Like, do you get like a beat in your head or a song and you're just like, I've heard that from a couple of the guys that play drums.
Yeah, sometimes I'll have ideas, or what it will be is I'll hear a song and I'll be like, that's a really good beat. And that's a really good, there's a lot of movement in the drums. And so I'll kind of like, that will be circling around in my head. Yeah. And then when I go to create, I'll like chop up a bunch of drum breaks and I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally got this from what results from that is very close to, what I've kind of been listening to.
Yeah, nothing like my bad teeth drumming habit at all. not the same thing.
See, I guess I'll beatbox to myself.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Like you're always tapping on something. You're always just like thinking about, like, I've always got a song stuck in my head pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some days it's like I don't know, there's like certain tones that I know I want to make with the synth, for example, or like with the guitar. And then other days it's very much like rhythm focused, or I'll like hear a song that has some kind of funky, like percussive thing going on that almost like shouldn't be there, but it's kind of like hidden. Right. And that reminds me, I'm like, oh, like maybe I could do that, So
this was a very personal endeavor over a number of years. You put a lot of time and energy into this. This feels like a lot of yourself that has been put out into the world, because the record is live for anybody who's curious. It's called Inertia. It's available pretty much wherever.
Everywhere.
I've only found it on, I've only used it, listened to it on Spotify, but that process, that experience of making something like that and putting that out into the world, I think that's challenging on many levels, but for I think a lot of people, we get into the fun first stages of it, and maybe we don't get quite into the final, editing and publishing stages, right? We might get stuck on perfecting something and not putting it out there. There's various reasons for that. I'm curious as to what yours were, because I mean, obviously you've had some feedback by this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what was that process like? I'm sure you've had a lot of good feedback. I'm sure there's probably been some that's like you've asked for critique. So
Yeah, I think the critique, or the, like, in the early days of producing, I think I asked a lot about critique, and I was like, how does this sound? I almost really needed like that validation from people to tell me it was good, but I actually didn't receive it at that time, so I knew
oh
that I
really?
had
Okay.
work to do. Yeah, and also it was kind of like, you've got to know your audience. Like, the music I make is in the ambient realm. It's primarily electronic. It's instrumental, which is, again, like, I almost forget to mention that most of the time. But like, if I'm sending this to someone who mostly listens to like country and pop music, for example, like, are they my target audience? Not really. Could they be my audience in the future? Potentially. But if I'm receiving kind of like notes from someone that is only listening to like that genre of music, then I'm kind of doing myself a disservice. The people that I would really, really be interested to hear what they think about my sound are people that also listen to my heroes. So
Hmm.
people that listen to Tycho, John Hopkins, Comtrues, the 1975, like, people that listen to these artists that I have looked up to for years now. And a lot of elements of their sound are kind of infused into mine. Um, yeah, what was your original question though? I feel like I went off on a tangent.
No, I'm just curious about the experience of putting yourself out there, right? Because like what
Yeah.
I was saying is so many people, I'd say just about everybody has an idea about something that they want to do. It might not be their vocation, but some type of project, some type of like creative endeavor, right? But
Yeah.
you're putting yourself out into the world. So you have
Yes.
to be practicing vulnerability. You have to be punching, fear in the throat or fear in the face, whatever the title of that book is, and putting yourself out there despite that. Addressing
Yeah.
the fear, addressing the anxiety, addressing whatever it is that you are feeling in order to put that project out there. And then even once it's out, people talk about like ignoring social media, or I've heard like actors don't read the reviews for the Broadway play, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
What was that like for you?
So yeah, it is a necessity to be vulnerable when you're making something.
Hmm.
I would say, like, you have to be willing to get uncomfortable, and you have to face yourself time and time again. So like, there were times where I would make something and I'm like, man, this is like the best thing I've made. And then like a few days later I listened to it. I'm like, it's not, like, it's really not there yet. And so it's kind of like, it's really trippy, like, on a psychological level, to within like 1 week to be like, this is amazing and I can't wait for every single person in the world to hear it.
Yep.
And then to go from that, and like a few days later, to being like, you know what? I think it needs work. And actually, I know it needs work. And it's kind of, it's a reflection of the self, like, how often do we, within 1 week, we feel on top of the world, we feel like we're crushing it. You get a good workout in, you've got like, you spend time with loved ones, you're really doing all the things that you want to be doing. And then in the same week, like a few days later, you wake up and you feel kind of off, and you're just like, man, I don't feel inspired today. And like, what's my life amounting to? You kind of sort of spiral a little bit with all these kind of existential thoughts and questions. And in a way, like, the art itself has been very grounding, because as I've refined each sound on the record and each track, it's kind of like a mirror. So I then, like, I step out of my flow state, I step out of my room, and I'm like, well, what can I refine in my own life? Like, what are the areas of my life that I need to work on? Because there's a lot of work to do. And it's kind of like, I don't know if this happens for everyone, but my experience of making the record was really transformational, because the record itself was this project that I was constantly working on and, like,
Yep.
chipping away at. And then it was like, as each season of my life came and went, it was like I was almost like it was like revealing different aspects to my life, which were like I could improve upon, or I could sit back and be like, you know what, like I'm really proud of the fact that I've done that thing, or I've got this far. And it was like this acknowledgement, like, you know, if I could make Dreamfield in a weekend, I definitely couldn't have done that when I was 21, but I did it when I was, I don't know, like 25 or something.
Yeah. I mean, anything I think creative would be very personal and very introspective and could have that effect on just about anybody. It is like that for me, but primarily because when I feel like I'm doing something creative, it has to come from, you know, somewhere inside of me. So like I'm connecting to myself. But then when I come out of that, like you mentioned, it's, God, I just totally lost the thought, but yeah, I would assume that would resonate with just about anybody because it is so personal.
Yeah. And it can't, like, even if you try and not make it personal, it's going to be, you know, like it's if when you're creating, it's not like, I don't know, you're creating from within your own being. Like it's not like you can't just compartmentalize aspects of yourself and be like, I'm going to create from this, from like, you know what I mean? Like from this.
I think point. I do get, correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm thinking, what I'm hearing is we often try and portray certain parts of ourselves to the world, like parts that we like, and maybe try and hide the things that we don't like. But when you're creating, like you have to be, especially with what you're doing, and I would maybe even with what I'm doing, you know, putting myself out there, speaking into Absolutely, a camera, man. And just saying my thoughts, you know, putting them on the internet. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be able to say, you know what, this is me. And that's very personal, and that's challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's this thing where as soon as you start to do that and you live that way, and that then becomes your like default mode, then I would say living authentically is no longer a fearful endeavor. And it's more of something that is a necessity for the kind of life you want to create. Because when you tap into your own vulnerability, like every other day when you're working on your project, it's like, if I can be that vulnerable in my music, like then maybe I can be that much more vulnerable with the people I care about the most and people that are in my life, you know? And
Practice
it's also like
vulnerability.
100%. And like the thing is, what I realized about the record too, is that the more I poured myself into it, the more I got out of it. And so it was like the more vulnerable and the more risk taking I was willing to do in the record, it was like the more rewarding it instantly became.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I think like life itself is like that too. You know, if you stay comfortable and you stay kind of within the margins and these confines that you've built around yourself, then it's like, it doesn't feel very rewarding at the end of the day because you haven't taken any risks. You haven't put yourself out there. You haven't put yourself in a position where you're willing to be criticized for something.
Yeah.
And I think, well, like with the record out now, I'm not worried about people not liking it because it's not for everyone. And it's like, how often do like our favorite artists release like a new album and you're like, yeah, this just isn't it. It's not really what I wanted. And it's like, if that can happen to our favorite artists, then it's like, surely I'm going to make something that someone doesn't like, and that's fine. Like maybe it's not for them.
Yeah. Well, I love it, man. I've been listening to it, probably for longer than most, because you gave me a couple tracks. I did, yeah. I mean, a year and a half ago, I think. Mm-hmm. But I'm loving having it on Spotify because, like I told you, I was looking forward to that because I've got a fairly long playlist called Work Vibes that has no lyrics because I cannot do focused work when there are lyrics, especially if it's a song that I start to recognize and I'm singing along with and whatever. But I love it. The album is called Inertia. Like we already mentioned, it is available just about everywhere. What are your socials, Jack?
So on Instagram, I'm at White Cricket Music. I have a Bandcamp page as well. That's like White Cricket Music. I have a Facebook page. it's kind of everything is, I think, under White Cricket Music. And
Cool.
I'm gonna start building a website as well over
Oh,
the
very
next
cool.
month or two, to just kind of, and I have like what I did on Instagram leading up to the album was I did like a track by track breakdown where I actually did like a write up for each track, and it kind of was diving into a bit more about the creative process and how each track was made, and kind of just like outlining like what the journey was for each one.
Sure.
And then for the album itself, like when I dropped that, I did a post where I kind of just, and that's on my Bandcamp page as well.
Okay.
Where like just a little like story, I guess, like kind of like a little synopsis of what the past like 6+ years have been, kind of what the story of the album has been this whole time.
Yeah.
If people are interested in reading that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are. So White Cricket on all those different platforms that you mentioned. I'm proud of you, man. You've been talking about it as long as I've known you, which has been about, I guess, four years now, just about, something like that. And
maybe a little longer actually. Yeah,
something. Yeah,
like 4.5 at least.
End of 2020. Yeah,
yeah,
it's roughly when we met.
Yeah,
but proud of you. It's great. I mean, I would put it up there with any of your heroes. I've listened to just about everybody that you've mentioned. I think I found Tycho before I met you, but you introduced me to just about everybody else except for the 1975. I had listened to them before.
Right.
But yeah, I encourage everybody to check it out.
Man.
I'm going to link to it on anything that we post, so people will be able to find it there. So like, subscribe, share, do all the things with White Cricket's music. Jack, I gotta let you go, man. We're at the end of the time, anyways, that I asked you for, but I am absolutely melting.
This office, let people know how hot it is in Newfoundland right now,
dude. This office is at the front of the house, so despite putting down the shades and running an AC unit, I am melting because I've got the door shut too, right? I don't want any random noises, and I didn't want to put the fan in here because didn't want the fan to interrupt my conversation with Jack. So
that's right. Well, I appreciate it. And I have to say thank you again for your support, because it's been really cool sharing like just kind of snippets of this journey with you. Like,
yeah, it's been fun.
As our friendship kind of grew, it was just like you got to see all the different phases of making the album. And I think basically like since we became friends, like a year after that, I feel like that's when I really kind of hit my stride creatively. So there was kind of, you got to see, you kind of missed a lot of like the doubting phase, a lot of the phase of like, what am I actually doing? Like, this is taking so much longer than I thought.
Right.
And then I feel like you got to see more of the kind of the confidence and the like, I'm working on something that's my best work yet. I can't wait for you to hear it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I feel like I said that to you.
You hit the deadline. You'd mentioned to me, because I know that I kept on you about it.
You did. And thank you for doing that, because it was challenging too, because you can't rush art itself. Like when you're in the making of it, I didn't want to compromise that part of the creative process. But as soon as I had all the tracks down and I was happy with them, I was like, all right, Matt, now you can ask me when I'm really releasing this thing.
Well, I'm glad it's out, man. I'm glad everybody else can enjoy it, and I hope they check it out. And I hope this is helpful.
It's been great. Yeah, I'd definitely do this again, man. I feel like there's a lot more to talk about still.
Yeah,
so
we might have a returning guest here. We haven't had one of those. Well, actually, no, that is a lie. Dr. Ron Johnson has been a returning guest, but you would be added to the list, sir.
I'd be happy to, man. Anytime.
All right, brother. I'm going to let you go. Thanks for doing this, Jack.
Love you, man. Yeah, thanks so much.
See you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. I hope you found some value in this episode. If you have, be sure to share the Ockery podcast with a friend and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can find the Ockery on socials at The Ockery and on the web at theockery.com.
Before I jump into like the proper bit that will ever see anybody else's ears, Aldous.
Yes.
Aldous.
Aldous,
I never say your last name. And I remember the last time I said it is when you were here. And I remember saying it to you that, dude, I don't think I've ever said, like, is it Aldous? Aldous?
Yeah. No, yeah, it's Aldous. So British people pronounce it Aldous.
Aldous.
But Canadians, like North America, it's like Aldous, I guess.
Okay, so what's the proper pronunciation again?
So for you, it'd be like Aldous.
For me.
Yeah.
What's the proper pronunciation for Jack?
For me, well, like, it's funny because like when my parents, I actually pronounce it now, like kind of like the Canadian way, like when it's over the phone, like, hey, can you please say your name? And I say it's Jack Aldous.
Aldous.
So
Okay.
like the all is like how you would say all, but because I say all in the way that I do,
Yeah, more of a UH sound
it,
than an AH.
Yeah.
Or an AL.
Yeah.
Okay. All good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well, Mr. Jack Aldous, welcome. Now I can't even say it, serious. Mr. Jack Aldous. Jack Aldous,
Mr.
otherwise
Aldous.
known as the White Cricket, has entered